It's day two. Welcome back to GC 365. I am Pastor Haley, and I'm the Encounter High School pastor at our Mill Creek campus.
And I'm Ashlyn Chang. I'm going to take this off. I'm Ashlyn Chang. I'm a high school senior at Jackson.
She's so great. She's happy to be here with me today, aren't you?
Obviously.
Okay, so we are celebrating day two. It might seem a little bit ridiculous because, we're only 2 days in. We've barely started the year. But I figured that if we create the habit now to start celebrating, it'll be that much easier to celebrate it when you're going through Numbers, Leviticus, reading the genealogy, the stuff that's not quite as exciting.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah, and we know how to celebrate at Encounter Student Ministry, so we'll celebrate the most random things. But let's get into what we read today, and if you haven't read yet, that is totally fine. We're just going to give you some spoilers and, the Sparks Note version. So, in the Old Testament, we read about Adam and Eve sinning, so the fall. Then we read about Cain and Abel, their children. Cain murdering Abel, no good. Then we hop into the New Testament where there's still action happening here. Joseph, Mary, and baby Jesus on the run from Herod. So, because Herod wants to kill Jesus. It's just a lot is happening. And so I want to know, Ashlyn, was there anything that stuck out to you? Any questions that you had while reading this?
I guess my biggest question was Joseph was told by his angel in his dream to go to Israel. And so he went to Israel, but then his next dream was to get out of there because it was Herod's son was the king. And so it was just a big journey. And it was kind of what's the purpose of that journey when he could have just went to the first place, the Nazarene.
Just skipped one spot,
The purpose
That's
of
a great question because if you think about it, you're not hopping on a plane, getting in the car, easy little road trip. It's you're getting on the donkey. You have Mary who just gave birth, so she most likely didn't want to be running around anyways.
Hobbling around.
So, that's a really great question. My question comes from reading about Adam and Eve, right? They sinned, and Cain and Abel. Cain killed his brother Abel because he was jealous. But then when we read in Proverbs at the very end of the day, it says in chapter 1, verses 8 through 9, "My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck." So there it's telling us that we need to listen to our parents and their instruction and essentially learn from their mistakes almost, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that Adam and Eve had the conversation with Cain and Abel hey, you know what? We messed up big time, so maybe don't follow in our footsteps? Or they did, and Cain just threw that out the window and did his own thing. Thoughts?
I think that where we live right now and where they live, that's a very, very different time period. And they're kind of the test, the guinea pig of all parenting in general. And so they didn't really have anyone to look up to. And we don't know necessarily if they knew whether or not to tell their kids to give them words of wisdom ever. So that their form of parenting could have been completely different. And so we don't know if their children received any guidance whatsoever, or as soon as they were kids, they're okay, go off, go do your own thing. It could have been completely different.
Yeah. No, that's a really great idea, a great thought on that. But especially, I know we talked about this before, and you're hey, we didn't have the 10 Commandments yet, so we don't know what punishment looked like for them, or how did they punish Cain?
There was just no rule book.
Exactly. So that's true. If you have any thoughts on what happened there, please let us know. But I want to talk about another thing that jumped out at me, and we're going to go back to Genesis, and it starts in chapter 3, verses 9 through 10. "Then the Lord God called to the man, 'Where are you?' He replied, 'I heard you walking in the garden, so I hid. I was afraid because I was naked.'" And then following that, we read about Cain, and after he killed Abel, God is asking him, "Where is your brother?" I think in both of these situations, the Lord knew exactly where Adam and Eve were physically. He wasn't playing the ultimate game of hide and seek by any means. And he knew what happened to Abel. And I think he was asking the question, "Where are you?" for them to recognize, do you realize what you have just done? Do you realize where you're at in your relationship with me now? And kind of to hold them accountable. So has there ever been a time in your life where you've had to ask that question, where am I at with God?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've asked myself that question, especially in just high school alone, so many times, because high school is just such an eventful time and there's just so much going on. And sometimes I remember like a few months ago, me coming to you and just not really knowing where I was at with my own faith, and like really asking you like to help guide me and like hold me accountable,
Right.
because I didn't know where I was at, and I felt like I was close to God's ideal path for me, but I was maybe on the next path over,
Right.
and like not exactly there. So I needed, for my own sake, to figure out those small mistakes and how to get them to what God wanted me to be doing and get on his path to be on his ideal path for
Yeah,
me.
no, and that's really great. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted Ashlyn here today, is to represent for the youth, because the Lord asked Cain, who was youth, asking him that question, where's your brother? Where are you at with me? But he also asked Adam and Eve, who were adults, and to recognize that it is great to ask yourself that question. If you're at that place with God in your faith in high school or middle school or even younger, that you can start that habit now and asking that question. It doesn't have to be a negative thing and wait till after you've made a mistake, that it can be so positive to just realign yourself with God. And if you are new in your faith and you are an adult, create that habit now as well. It is not too late. I think personally that God knows where we're at all times, physically, mentally, spiritually. But like you said, he asks us that to hold us accountable. He already knows, but he wants us to know because we are a part of that relationship with him. So thank you, Ashlyn, for being here.
Of course.
Thank you for watching, and continue on with day 3.